Today's podcast isn't sponsored by anyone, because apparently I have a bad attitude. Me, a bad attitude. I'll tell you who has a bad attitude. All of you. But that won't be a problem after I complete my plan for worldwide domination. Now, where did I put my to-do list?
All the tabletop role-playing news. We aim to amuse and we aim to enthuse. And Morris's unofficial tabletop RPG talk.
Hello, and welcome to Morris's unofficial tabletop RPG talk. I am Morris, aka Russ, or Russ, aka Morris, and with me today is...
Peter Coffey from the Southampton Guild of Roleplayers. Hello! Russ!
Hello, Peter.
Hello, Russ. I see you brought a friend.
I have. I've got two friends.
Really?
We've got two special guests on the podcast today.
One of your special guests is an awful lot cuter than the other one. This is Kevin.
Yeah, and you're not the cute one. Sorry.
Yeah. This special friend is Kevin Kulp from Pelgrane Press.
Hello!
And you are responsible for, I say that like it's a bad thing, but it's actually a good thing, you are responsible for
Yes.
the game known as TimeWatch.
Woo!
Which hit Kickstarter, 2 years ago? Was it now?
Oh my goodness, no, more like 5 years ago, maybe
Yeah.
6.
5 years ago?
Yeah, long time, man.
We're old.
Does not feel like 5 years.
No, that's because I think it finally got fulfilled 3 years ago. So, you know.
Oh, right.
There's a lag in
Okay.
there.
It's all about time travel, so that's why you may be confused.
Oh, yes. Yeah, exactly. That old Kickstarter story. Okay, then.
And the other guest is Hudson.
It's Hudson, puppy extraordinaire, who is kind of gone to sleep now, unfortunately. Or fortunately, one of those two things.
Yes.
Yeah, he's curled up in the corner of the room there. He's a little black golden retriever collie cross.
Yes.
And he moved in on Friday.
Yes.
Today is Monday, so he's been here 2 days. And he's settled in beautifully.
Yes.
So he's now the official podcast dog.
He seems like the goodest of boys.
He is a good boy.
Yes.
Every podcast needs an official podcast dog. That's just the rules.
I think so.
You can't break the rules.
I know, right? If you don't have one, you're not really trying now, are you?
I think so. I agree. Right then, shall we do some news?
Yes, that.
What sort of news shall we do today? Should we do some RPG news? Or
How about Gen Con news?
Gen Con news?
Interesting.
Well,
Yes, I suppose we could talk about that. That's some sort of little shindig that happens over in the States, isn't it?
A little shindig, yes.
And
A
what
little
this little
shindig
affair?
with a little exclusive thing with about, 70,000 people.
Oh, yes. Intimate.
Yeah. That's how I'd like to think of it.
Yeah. Well, I try. I think I generally have about that many people for some of my parties. So, yeah.
I think that might not be true.
You besmirched my honour, sir.
You could just go to Gen Con and claim it was one of your parties.
Yeah, just adopt it.
So what's actually been announced at Gen Con?
There was a small release.
A small release? Oh, yes.
Yes, a small release of a small game known as Pathfinder.
I've heard of that
That's how you
before.
pronounce it. Pathfinder is how you pronounce it.
Pathfinder.
That's the official pronunciation of that game. Pathfinder 2, in fact.
Is this some little known sequel from maybe a French studio?
Some little indie game, I think. Yeah,
Pathfinder.
never heard of it before.
We do not know. This is what we have. Yes.
Yeah. So Pathfinder 2 was finally unveiled and released to the public. I don't know how well the sales went at the actual convention. I assume that they pretty much sold thousands and thousands and thousands of them. I know that I saw some pictures and they had like piles bigger than my house of Pathfinder 2 books.
Okay.
I mean, they were literally there were photos of them lying on top of these piles of books. That's how many they had.
Nice.
So I don't know whether they sold out or what happened, but I know that I've seen an awful lot of people talking about Pathfinder 2 over the last week. Tell you what was interesting was, the Amazon sales charts.
Sure.
There's one for fantasy and gaming, I think it is, one of the subcharts. Normally D&D's basically been number one on that chart for the last 4 or 5 years.
Yeah.
I mean, it's quite a niche category, obviously, so D&D's going to be at the top of it. But just briefly, for one day, D&D was not at the top of that chart. And I think that was last Thursday. Briefly, Pathfinder 2 hit the top of that chart for a day.
Well, there we go.
which is the first time that's happened. It's the first time it's not been D&D in about 5 years.
Impressive.
It is impressive.
Well, that's glorious. We've seen with 4th edition D&D when Pathfinder really sort of took the lead in the industry, and then as 5e came out and sort of people, not everybody, but some people moved on over. It's nice to see Paizo having the opportunity to really seize that once again.
I know you've seen it, Peter. Have you seen Pathfinder 2 yet, Kev? Have you had a chance?
I haven't seen it yet, no.
I've got a copy of it, and we did a big episode on it last week, actually. But I'm really liking it.
Yes.
I wasn't sure. I did the play test. I was unsure, and coming into it, I was, I wanted to like it. I want all the best for those guys because they're really nice people. But I was really super pleased to find that. I really, really, really like it.
Yes. I liked the encumbrance rules, the bulk rules, so much that I filed the serial numbers off and have already stolen them. I'm already using them in my games.
Oh, I've stolen the initiative rules, definitely.
The initiative rules I was thinking about, but the bulk rules, like the carrying things. I'm running this West Marches game, which I've got two games out so far, and they've opened hilarious. Players are actually running away from things in 5th Ed D&D because they're like, wait, no. We cannot fight those things. We're going to run away now. Goodbye. Bye. Run.
Wait, are you saying D&D players ran away from something?
Yes.
That never happens.
Oh, my players would run away from things all the time.
Oh, yeah.
But hang on a second, Peter, did you just say that you stole the encumbrance rules? I don't even know who you are anymore. Did you steal overbearing and grappling next?
Well, I see no need to steal grappling, but basically the encumbrance rules are so simple, it's it was the shame not to.
Well, that wasn't the only release at Gen Con.
No, there's loads of other stuff. What was it?
Well, the Shadowrun 6th edition was released at Gen Con, finally. So what happened was the actual release to the public apparently doesn't happen until October or so. But they had some at Gen Con which they sold out of.
Of course.
Which I guess is good news. I don't know how many they had. I saw some pictures of their booth and it looks like they had quite a lot. But they sold out of those, I'm hearing. But what's interesting is there's already 10 pages of errata.
Oh dear, how unfortunate.
That's, yeah.
That seems like they are paying attention to errata. Good for them.
Yeah, getting feedback from the community.
I'm wondering if by the time October comes round and that final proper public release happens, I wonder if that 10 pages of errata will be incorporated into that book. I don't know. I'm guessing here completely.
It's 10 pages right now. They've only had it for 5 days or something.
That is a thing. Yeah.
It's man, when my books come out, I get angry if I find a single typo afterwards.
It's frustrating.
It's always where you open your book. Oh, and there's that typo.
There you go. First thing you see. Yeah.
First thing you see.
Yeah.
It's tradition. It's tradition. Just roll with it.
Or people who they've got your book, your 300-page book, and their only comment on the entire 300 pages, the entire 3 years of work that you put in, the only comment they've got is, on page 291, I saw you... that's your takeaway. That's your only takeaway from that book.
Think of it this way. They enjoyed your book so much that they read the whole thing and noticed it.
I guess so, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, hopefully, yeah. Or they opened it and that was the first thing they saw. And
one of the two. Yeah.
One of those two things, yeah.
Probably the first one. Almost certainly.
Let's go with the first one, yeah.
Exactly.
Definitely the first one. What else happened at Gen Con?
Diana Jones Awards.
Diana Jones Awards. Have you got that? I haven't actually seen who won that one. Did you?
Yes, Alex Roberts won that with Starcrossed.
Fantastic. That was the actual RPG, wasn't it?
Are you familiar with Starcrossed?
I'm not, but I know there was a couple of board games and something else.
Yeah. So Starcrossed is...
Arcana.
Yep.
Yes, that was it, yeah.
Right. Starcrossed is a game that's built on the same engine that Epediah Ravachal's Dread horror game is, right? It uses a Jenga tower instead of dice.
Oh, okay.
And what it is, this is actually incredibly brilliant. So let me talk about it for a second. The idea is that you're simulating sort of a romance thing where there are two people, it's a two-person game, two people are playing. You should not be having a relationship with each other. It's a really bad idea. And and as you play, as you start pulling out the blocks of the tower, as the tower gets shakier, that's symbolizing how shaky your resolve is getting about not having a relationship with each other. So that seems sort of like a normal, a normal romance game. Except the thing is, this is incredibly applicable to lots of situations. So here's an example. Ooh. I have a friend who I'm going to be playing this with. One of us is going to be playing basically Elric, and the other one is basically going to be playing Stormbringer, right? Somebody who has an intelligent magic sword that wants something from them, and they're trying to resist.
An intelligent evil magic sword.
Sure, right?
You know what?
We don't know.
I like souls. Maybe you should get more souls from me. How about it? You kill more people, eat more souls. You're like, no, that's wrong.
Exactly. I mean, you could play it with.
Nice.
Yes, you could play it with somebody like the movie She, somebody who is falling in love with the AI on their phone. Right? There's a lot of different ways to play it, and it's just this beautiful game design. So that's one I'm a big fan of.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
What else have we got? We got an announcement from Green Ronin.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, the 5th season role-playing game.
Yes. Again, another thing I'm not personally familiar with. I don't know if either of you two are. 5th season is a fantasy novel series.
Yeah, it's from N.K. Jemisin. It's her Broken Earth trilogy. I haven't read it myself, but I heard fantastic things.
So look forward to hearing more about that.
Yeah, I guess they've literally just announced it, so I guess we'll hear more over the coming year or so.
Yeah. Was there anything from Pelgrane?
Well, since I wasn't at the seminar where they announced new releases, I don't know. That's me kind of being funny, right? I've had my head in the sand getting the Swords of the Serpentine out the door, and we'll talk more about that, right? So I'm not up to speed about what's coming out in the shorter run. So I'm super excited to hear the recording of that.
So Wizards of the Coast Kate Welsh has hinted at a celebrity-written D&D book for 2020.
Oh, like with Deborah Ann Wallen, that sort of person? Or...
Yes. Let me call it up. So what do we have? We have Critical Role's Marisha Ray and True Blood's Deborah Ann Wall. We don't know anything else about it other than that.
Nice.
Some people seem to be suggesting this is a collection of smaller adventures. And there might be some other writers involved as well, but who knows? Who knows? We'll find out sometime, I guess.
It'll be out when it's out, and we shall look forward to seeing it.
They did say that some of it will have work from DM's Guild authors who haven't yet been published by Wizards of the Coast.
Oh, nice.
But again, I don't know who.
Yeah.
So it's kind of a half of a news item, that really, wasn't it?
It's like
a hint of a news item.
Well, we seem to be like a bit further down the road, so it's like sort of the teaser for the trailer for the announcement of the pre-release.
Yeah.
All
right. Keith Baker and Jen Ellis, who are working together on a tabletop RPG of The Adventure Zone, which is a podcast and comic book. And I think it's the podcast that won our most popular podcast of 2018, if I remember correctly.
Yeah. The Adventure Zone has done very well,
So it's kind of a humorous podcast. It's based loosely on D&D. And it features the McElroy family, Justin, Travis, and Griffin, and their father, Clint.
Yes.
So this is Keith Baker from Eberron, Jen Ennis, his partner in crime, at Two Together Studios. And no more details than that, just that they're developing a tabletop game along with the McElroys based on the podcast and the graphic novels.
And why not? Well, that sounds exciting.
The McElroys are hilarious. Is
that how it's said? McElroys.
McElroy, right, this bodes well.
Yeah.
You should be honoured to pronounce your surname properly, Kevin. It's not how we roll on this podcast.
Goodman Games, or should I call it Goodman Games, as it is better known, has announced another of their classic TSR original adventures reincarnated.
Did they say what?
Goodman Games takes these old TSR adventures and does a D&D 5th edition conversion plus the original adventure plus a variant or two, plus additional material, and puts all this together in a big, brick-sized hardback book. Mm-hmm. And they've done this 3 times so far. They've done Into the Borderlands. They did The Art of Dread, and they did Expedition to the Barrier Peaks.
Right.
Nice.
And this time they're doing 1982's The Lost City by Tom Morday. So that's the one in the pyramid, I believe, isn't it?
Yep, that's the one in the pyramid.
If I recall correctly. Yeah.
I'd be hoping for a pyramid with the Lost City.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. What else have we got in the news? I'm trying to whip through this as quickly as possible because there's so much of it. Paizo had a lot of announcements to make.
Oh, yes.
Upcoming products.
Oh, they've got like a ton of stuff coming out. They've got like a setting book for Galarian.
Yeah.
They've got like a lot of it's things like critical and fumble decks. They've got
They've got a lot more than this coming. They've announced about 10 new products now. They announced.
Yeah.
So what have we got? I'll whip through these really quick. So I'm not going to sort of dive because it's going to take ages otherwise. So we got the Lost Omens World Guide, which we already knew about.
Yep.
We got the Lost Omens Character Guide, which has new ancestries, which is their word for races, the Hobgoblin, Leshy, and Lizard Folk, and new heritages and ancestry feats. The critical hit deck we knew about, the fumble deck we knew about, the pawn box I think we probably knew about. Sounds like the sort of thing we would have known about.
Little minis, all good.
Bestiary battle cards. Ooh. Just a card for each of the monsters in the bestiary.
Like spell card, but more monstery. Yep.
Yeah. Lost Omens Gods and Magic in January 2020. This is the Gods of the Age of Lost Omens.
Fantastic. Useful for your clerics.
The Lost Omens is, of course, how they're now referring to Galarian. Yeah.
They decided, well, no one knows what Galarian is, but you know what? The Age of Lost Omens sounds awesome.
Yes, it does.
It's a good name.
It is a good name.
I know.
What else we got? We got the Extinction Curse Adventure Path starting in January, where the players are members of a circus troupe. That sounds kind of fun.
I guess. I mean, it sort of ignores the fact that half the people I know are scared of clowns, but I guess you can get past that.
Hey, Kudophobia, it's a real thing.
It is a real thing. I've never quite understood it myself, but yeah, people are scared of clowns.
Well,
then again, I'm scared of spiders, and some people are not.
Arachnophobia is pretty legit because they're like horrible and they've got 8 legs. But no, it's like I think it's because clowns look like dead people, and there's like a sort of an instinctive disgust.
I think it's just because of things like It, isn't it, and stuff like that.
Oh, it matters, I think, yeah.
Or is it from before that?
That's where it really kicked in, I suspect.
I reckon so.
Yes, I blame Pennywise.
Yep. All his fault. I blame him for most things, to be fair.
Fair.
What else we got from Pathfinder? We got the Pathfinder Game Mastery Guide. This is for GMs, has chase rules, research, vehicle combat, how to design monsters, big NPC stat block collection, stuff like that. We've got a massive dungeon crawl to launch a new campaign called the Dead God's Hand.
Okay.
It's for 1st to 7th level characters, and it explores the history of Arodin, I don't know how you pronounce it, the dead god of humanity. We have Absalom, City of Lost... This is a long list, sorry. Absalom.
Read faster.
Absalom, City of Lost Omens, a great big source book detailing the enormous city of Absalom.
Yep.
We've got a poster map folio for that city.
Ooh, shiny.
We have the Agents of Edgewatch Adventure Path, July to December next year, where you are members of the Absalom City Watch and must solve a series of bizarre murders, thefts, and destruction carried on a crime wave.
Fantastic. Yeah.
Bestiary 2 coming in spring, 300 more monsters.
Wow.
And then I guess this is the big one because this is going to be July next year. Gen Con. Is Gen Con in July next year? I guess
Gen Con next year is July 30th through August 2nd.
Oh, there we go. Okay, so Advanced Players Guide coming out of Gen Con next year. We've got 4 new classes. Yeah. The Investigator, Oracle, Swashbuckler and Witch. And 10 new ancestries. Azumar, Catfolk, Changeling, Duskwalker, Dampire, Kobold, Orc, Ratfolk, Eifling, or Tengu. I don't know if that's a typo or if that's what it's called.
Alrighty.
And there we go. That is the Pathfinder news. I went through that as fast as I could there because there's loads.
It was blistering.
It was blistering, wasn't it?
You're just gabbling. I
could tell you were captivated.
Yeah, captivated.
What else? Oh, we had the Eddies, of course.
Oh, yes, right. yes.
The Eddies took place on Friday, and Chaosium won everything.
Yes.
Well,
that's the in brief. Chaosium just won, like, I don't know, what have you got to win it?
Yeah.
Hey, Pelgrane won for Fall of Delta Green, which I suppose is Chaosium related, so okay, fine.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, let's face it, the real winner from Gen Con and the Ennies was Cthulhu.
Yes. Yeah. Cubicle 7 won Best Writing for Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay. Sly Flourish's Return of the Lazy Dungeon Master.
Oh, that is such a good book. Have you read it?
We spoke to Mike a few weeks ago on the podcast, and he got gold for Best Electronic Book.
Fabulous.
Good work.
Yeah, I mean, I won't go through them all, but we'll
obviously we can't claim credit for that, but we'd love to. Yeah.
Ken and Robin talk about stuff. Best podcast.
I see. Someone decided to nominate them this year.
I think they win most years, though, don't they?
No, so they only win when they get nominated.
Did they not last?
No.
They had won, I think, 4 or 5 years in a row, and then didn't get nominated last year. Probably because they'd won every time they'd been nominated.
So. Yeah.
Massive and devoted fan base.
It's a really good podcast. I'm not surprised, to be honest. Right, what else we got in the news? What else we got? Ed Greenwood has started a column over on EN World.
He has.
So he's joined Jim Ward and Jonathan Tweet, who both currently have columns, and Ed Greenwood is the latest. And his first article was How the Realms Began, where he talks about himself as a kid reading various fantasy and science fiction stuff, and how he started writing stories, came across D&D, wasn't that into D&D at first, and then came round to it, and then started rewriting the Forgotten Realms to fit into the D&D rules.
Yes.
It's a really, really interesting article.
I liked it. Apparently he was having all his stories taken to work by his dad, and they were like, tell us more, put a sex scene. Guys. He's 5 years old.
Oh, good God.
Inappropriate.
It was different back in those days. Weird.
It wouldn't be a new section without something from Modifius. Their Fallout Wasteland Warfare RPG, which I think we mentioned before.
Yeah, we talked about it before.
That's now launched in print. So you can pick that up from today.
Yes.
What else we got? ICV2's RPG rankings for spring 2019. More stats. Every quarter, ICV2 releases its tabletop RPG rankings. D&D, no surprise, has maintained its top spot. Second spot, interestingly, Starfinder has surged up to number 2.
Well, that's kind of nice to hear.
Yeah. Star Wars, number 3, as it seems to have been for the last 2 or 3 years now. It always seems to come in at number 3 behind D&D, then Pathfinder. Number 4 is Vampire 5th Edition.
Okay.
Yep.
No big surprise there, I don't think. And Pathfinder has dropped to number 5. I don't think that's a big surprise when you got a new edition just coming out. Sales do tend to sort of slow down a bit in the year preceding that. I mean, that happened to D&D as well in the year preceding
I remember.
editions. YouTube got Simply 6.
I
have a bit of self-plugging here. Based on your suggestion, Peter, that I do it in a smaller notebook-sized format.
Yes.
Look what I have here.
That looks like a smaller notebook-sized format of Simply 6.
That is what I would like to describe as a smaller notebook-sized format.
Yeah.
I'm really pleased with this little thing. It's it was 20 pages as a sort of normal sort of A4 size book. So it's half that size, and so now it's obviously twice the number of pages because it's the same number of words. So it's 42 pages, soft cover, tiny little thing.
But can you make it credit card sized?
Really? What, the entire book? the character sheets, as you see there, they're basically credit card size now.
They are quite small character sheets.
Yeah, I do like those little. Maybe I should get some actual credit cards made with
the reason we're so obsessed with character sheets on this podcast is because they're the user interface for your role-playing games. So if you want somebody to actually play your role-playing game, it's probably a good idea if they can actually read the character sheet. Controversial, I know, but it's a Sandtimer Thermon. It's probably the thing we like least about the new edition of Pathfinder, which is filling in Form 5062100 for the tax office. No, sorry, filling in the character sheet is not the most exciting thing in the world. And they chose such a lovely shade of brown.
Because my character sheets for Swords of the Serpentine aren't finished yet, all the character sheets, or just about all the character sheets for Gen Con, were done in Excel. So, but really, really useful, well designed, very, very well designed in Excel.
Look, so long as you've got the relevant information where the eye goes to first, then it's probably quite well designed. So top left, you've got a lot of useful information. Mm-hmm. Just saying, just throwing it out there.
I think, unless either of you two can think of anything else, that might be it for the news.
Yeah, I was expecting more stuff to come out at Gen Con.
Oh. I could just make some up if you like.
Tempting.
We are a news podcast, not a fake news podcast.
We should do a fake news podcast. It's like each week we could do a real news podcast and a fake news podcast.
I think we could go close enough to that line with the Guess the Kickstarter game.
That is true.
Hey, so if we're done with the news, does this mean it's time for our favourite game in all the world?
I think it might be.
Guess the Kickstarter game?
It's time to play our favorite game. It's time to play the game. Our favorite game in all the world. Guess the Kickstarter from just the name.
This is Peter's favourite part of the podcast, or his least favourite part of the podcast. It's one of those two things.
Yes. I've got the magic cards. Bring your set. Oh, no, I can tell from your face, Kev. Yeah, more of a you guy, man.
I remember, man, I had Alpha and Beta Magic the Gathering cards, boy. I wish I'd hung on to those.
Yes, wow. that would probably be worth quite a lot of money.
Yeah, they'd probably be worth money now, wouldn't they?
Oh, quite a bit, yes.
Yeah,
thousands.
Never mind.
Right then, let's play our favourite game in all the world, shall we? The game where I read out the name of a Kickstarter and you guess what it is from just the name.
Okay.
Are you familiar with the game?
I am familiar with the game.
Wonderful. In that case,
you've heard the title, so you know the rules.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. A game that has the rules in the title. It makes it easier.
Yeah.
Do you want to go first, Peter?
Yes, it is traditional.
Right. What is Flashback RPG?
Interesting. It sounds like a RPG that would give you a series of one-off. It'd be like a one-off, and it'd be like a nice evening's entertainment. And what you're doing is you're telling a story entirely through flashbacks, because you create like a completely unrealistic situation, and then you sort of flashback to work out how you got to this bizarre and horrendous situation, and then you can play through and resolve it. That's what I'd go with.
Not bad. Not spot on, but you're not a million miles away. I will give you 75 out of 102.
Wait, 102? All right.
Yeah, it's all part of the process. Never question the spreadsheet, Kevin. Never question the spreadsheet. It's all
the scoring system is
out.
highly scientific, Kev. You don't need to understand it. It's just
fair enough.
It's the QI scoring system. Peter has scored minus 1 million points once.
That's impressive.
It was fair. I was way off. Yeah.
So this one it's a narrative-driven, skill-based RPG. It's an original system. It's set in a steampunk fantasy world, and what happens is you develop your character by adding to your backstory and building personality traits during play. And these are the flashbacks of the title.
Oh, nice.
Oh, okay.
I'd play that.
So it uses storytelling techniques which were inspired by film. I can't even talk. TV and film is what I was trying to say. I said film. TV and film.
That's not what you said.
What did I say?
You said tit film. I'm like, interesting. TV and film, yes.
Go on.
I totally lost track of what I was saying.
Inspired
TV
by
and
TV
film.
and film.
Flashbacks, and you reveal events and characters from your past to enhance your skills and abilities in the present.
Ooh, shiny.
Okay, little mechanic there. That sounds quite
good
fun.
name. Good name. I got quite a lot of that then. So
You didn't do too badly there. Yeah. Okay.
Right.
Kev, would
But
you
now
like
you've
to
seen
go?
how it's done.
I would like to go.
All right then.
Hooray!
All right then. This one.
You're going.
This one is called Black, Red, White.
Black, red, white.
Yes.
Got it. All right, so this is clearly the game of poaching zebras in Africa. You're actually... Oh, no. You're actually... The blood, Russ, the blood. And in fact, you're actually nuns. So you are Carmelite nuns poaching zebras in Africa, right? So really, it is a tribute to the gore that comes from this. No, that's a horrible definition. No, that's bad. Let's not do that.
I'm ashamed of you.
As well, you should be. Let's go with a black and white horror game, right? Sort of like old-timey horror game, where the only real color that sort of enters the narrative is the blood of the heroes as the monster tracks them down and devours them.
So, do you remember myself, a little earlier when I told you how Peter once scored -1,000,000 points?
Oh, come on. My Carmelite Nuns hunting zebras was pretty good. All right, fine.
To be fair, I don't think there's any way anyone could possibly have got this.
Let's hear it.
And I'll be honest, I'm reading the description and I'm still not sure I get it. So,
okay.
There better be
certainly
zebras.
Interesting. Certainly interesting. Okay.
I'm hoping for newspapers, black and white and red all over.
Yes.
All right.
Or a sunburned penguin, yeah.
Yeah. Or a nun rolling down a hill. All right.
Where was I? Right, I think rather than me try to explain it to you, because I will do so incorrectly, because I don't really understand it, I'm just going to read what it says to you.
Okay.
And you can try and explain to me what it is.
Okay, do it.
All right. A series of 3 existential, experimental games inspired by colour and dreams.
Okay.
And
They
dreams?
don't exist yet. I trust you. Do you trust me?
No.
Black is a troop-style game that uses live action techniques and movement through physical space to shape a prompted investigation into a disruptive life event and the discovery of how to move on. Red is a scenario-based game that uses tight time management and physical object play to drive quick decision-making in volatile situations and then explore the impact of those decisions on relationships to others and to the self. And White is a collaborative game that uses silence, individual movement, and physical touch to ritually shape the context of the moment, discover the challenges, I don't understand what these words mean, inherent to the context.
Right, so, Russ, I have a very simple question to test whether this is like legit. Can you pronounce the person who's doing this Kickstarter's name?
Non-existent games. Nathan D. Paoletta.
Oh, Nathan Paoletta, of course. Yeah, that's a real person, and he's quite good. So this is almost certainly part of Breaking Kickstarter. Does it have a Breaking Kickstarter badge?
Let me open it up.
Sure. Breaking Kickstarter is a push from Kickstarter to get people to create really sort of unusual, non-traditional projects. Yes. So, for instance, I know someone who's doing a 4-day Kickstarter.
I saw that one, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah,
okay,
it's written right at the bottom. This is a Break Kickstarter project. It's right.
Yep.
It's buried
yes,
right
exactly.
at the bottom there.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's
is Nathan Paoletta? Are they part of the Nordic movement in like a really heavy way?
He's absolutely an indie game designer, and he's done some great stuff. I'm not sure how much he is into the sort of Nordic LARP movement. But this really clearly is influenced by that. So so it's sort of at the end of the spectrum, but he does good work.
Okay. Yeah. So it's feasible this might actually be worth your money because I know it sounds a lot like buzzword bingo, but actually that could be really good if you've got something decent to work off with, and actually the symbolism is quite strong.
And clearly, as part of Break Kickstarter, he's trying to push boundaries, so that explains the text.
No, it's good.
It's better than my zebra game, that's for sure.
Yes. I don't know. I think you could probably work that into that. I'd probably run it under Powered by the Apocalypse because that's what we do nowadays. If we're not sure, we just say, I don't know, Powered by the Apocalypse, job done.
So, Russ, how many points did I get?
So I don't think it would be fair to give you -1 million because that was really, really hard. So let's go with -12.
I can live with that, sure.
What did you get, Peter?
75.
72, 75, 72 or something.
75 out of 102.
Oh, right, okay. 75.
That sounds about right, yes.
Not that I'm keeping score.
Still in it
Or
to win it.
competitive.
Okay.
Everything to play for, I assure you.
Yeah. Anything could happen. Okay,
Yeah,
Peter. What is this? Inspire, an RPG of... I'm not going to say what the last 2 words are, though, because they will explain the Kickstarter. So, Inspire. What is Inspire?
I love these ones where you don't give me the title.
The problem is, these are the ones where the title literally says what it is.
But the title actually explains what it is. Yes, that's always the point of the game, which is that you need a good title in order to get people to play a game.
Anyway. The title is very good for a Kickstarter, but it's not so good for our game.
Right. I've got a guess, but...
Yeah, well, you keep your guess to yourself. That's my yeah, you wind your neck in school. I'm watching it. Sorry.
Come on, Peter, what is it?
Right. Yes, what's Inspire? Well, obviously there's only like one major answer, which is all about church mice, and it's sort of a spiritual successor to the Redwall books and Mouse Guard.
Wow.
In fact, it's using the Mouse Guard system to implement the tales of church mice in an exciting 3D arena where they're like working in the spire of a church with plenty of opportunity for airship travel, leaping from rafter to rafter, and all sorts of swashbuckling heroics.
Do you know what? I love that answer.
I would play that game.
It's wrong, but I love it.
Oh, yeah. I know.
You knew it was wrong when you said it. But I'll give you 2 points just for the just for the fun of the answer. So that gives you 77 to catch.
Yeah, so they're positive numbers.
So what this is an exploratory ancient era GM-less RPG where you play as powerful spirits trying to become gods. Which is almost what you said, apart from the bit where it's totally different.
Everything. Yeah, sure. What's the full name of this?
Inspire, an RPG of godly competition.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. So you could probably have given me that. I still would have got it, but yeah.
Well, that leaves 1 Kickstarter left.
I'm excited.
So the score is 77 to -12. So Kevin, you need to score, if my mathematics are correct, 89 points. 89 points. Is that right?
Sure, why not?
77 plus 12.
That is correct, yes. 89 points, yes.
77 12 is 84. So if he does get 89 points, that
You
will
are,
be...
however, assuming that I'm trying to win. Go on. All right, let's hear it.
Yeah.
Right then, are you ready?
I'm ready.
Peter's going to love the title to this one. Unfortunately, it's not Peter's turn.
That's too bad.
This is called, and it's by Atlas Games, it is called Magical Kitties Save the Day.
Magical Kitties Save the Day. Huh. By the way, I think your dog is chewing on something.
Yes.
No, he's drinking water.
Oh, okay.
Good lad.
So, this is going to be shocking, but I think Magical Kitties Save the Day is a game about magical cats saving the day. I think it is a game.
I don't know how you got that from that title.
I think it is a game of feline heroics, of intelligent cats doing their best.
Are they feeling or feline heroics? Oh, I see what you did there.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
Yeah.
Of magical cats who are secretly intelligent, moving around the world of humans, and putting the world back to its proper state.
Well, you are 100% correct. You've just scored 90 points.
Oh, well, that's lucky.
Who would have foreseen this kind of event?
Coincidence.
I think the only thing to say here is suck it, Peter. I mean, gosh, thank you. I'm flattered and appreciative.
It does look fun. It's got troubles like witches, aliens, and hyper-intelligent raccoons as the bad guys.
Seems like you can't trust raccoons. It's the tiny pink hands. They can pick locks. Pick locks for us.
That does look
The
fun.
hands. Yeah.
Trash pandas.
Yeah, it's designed for kids as young as 6 years old, and also it can be played with older players, whether they're parents, babysitters, teachers, or older siblings.
Delightful.
Lovely. Well then, that is it for our favourite game in all the world, and I think Kevin won with just a whisker. A whisker, did you get what I did that?
Squeaked in under the
Did you like
bar.
that?
Played for and got. Very well done, Kevin. Yes.
I was up against harsh competition, and I just
Oh,
squeaked it
well,
out.
yeah. It's always a pleasure to have people on to have a go at doing it. So, listeners, we're gathered here today to interview one of our frequent guests on the show. He's scaled Everest. He's travelled to the furthest reaches known to man. He's created the world's largest mousetrap. A man in need of no further introduction. The man, the myth, the legend. Listeners and netizens, Professor Victor von Wolfhausen-Smythe.
So, young man, how are you?
I'm very well, Professor. Delighted as ever to have you on the show.
Marvellous, marvellous. Where's your friend, the good-looking chap with the scruffy beard?
Morris, I'm afraid he couldn't be with us for this section. He's busy rescuing Hudson from a pile of flowers and toilet roll. I fear he could be some time.
Oh, shame. So, I expect you're wondering why I agreed to be on your little radio show again.
Podcast, Professor. We're hardly pretty enough for radio. I assumed it was because you wanted to talk to us about your experiences at Gen Con.
The Conference for Genetic Engineering in the Near Future? Hardly, my boy, hardly. We wouldn't want to bore your listeners by talking about that now, would we?
Conference for Genetic... I thought you'd been to Gen Con.
No, let me tell you about a concern of mine. I was reading on this intertubes device on one of those hard-hitting news websites, the Everyday Spud, I think it's called, or maybe it was called the Shallot.
The Everyday Spud website? The Shallot?
Apparently, there are hundreds of role players being abandoned. Can you imagine? Trapped. Somehow they are being lost on this cloud thing.
I see.
Yes, it's a tragedy of unimaginable proportions. Won't someone please think of the role players?
Professor, I'm a little lost. Could you elaborate a little more?
Yes, well, they're all apparently gripped by Ares, or as the Vulgate would have it, Discord, and as a result they are actually playing on the intertubes and thus cannot be heard. I won't stand for it. Please, listeners to this most excellent radio show, I would like to raise a subscription to help save the role players. Any money you can spare, even as little as a farthing or a groat, will help me mount an expedition to find this cloud where Eris is holding these role players and attempt a rescue.
You want to raise an expedition to rescue role players from the cloud where Eris, goddess of strife and discord, is preventing them from actually playing.
Yes, that's quite correct, young man. Listeners, please send your donations to P.O. Box 30301099 with all checks made payable to save the role players.
Professor von Wolfhausen-Smythe, thank you very much for coming on the show. So I think we should probably, because we might forget otherwise, and that would be awful, we should get in with the Patrons Ask Questions.
Oh, yes, I actually did forget about that.
Yes.
So what we do each week, Kev, is we ask our podcast listeners to give us some questions for our guests, and I am just calling that list up right now. I unfortunately phrased the question slightly wrongly, but let's have you answer them anyway. Because why not?
We're not saying Russ is criminally incompetent, but you'd think he would be better at working out what people are going to say when he asks.
All right, here we go. So what I said was our guest today is Kevin Kulp with TimeWatch RPG and Pelgrane Press, plus a possible puppy. Got any questions for him? Get them in here, and
God, they're all for the puppy, aren't they?
Listener
to be fair, they're not all for the puppy. Okay,
yes, listener Angus Abramson writes in to ask, what tastes better, slippers or sandals?
Oh man, slippers absolutely taste better, right? They've got all the sort of the accumulated fuzz, plus foot odor. While sandals really are mostly open air, they're not nearly as satisfying. They do have a better chew feel, though.
I guess slippers probably smell worse, don't they?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Or
to a dog.
depending on whether you're a dog. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. We also have a question from Lee Donovan, one of our
Yes.
long-time listeners. He wants to know,
Hey, Lee.
who's a good boy? Who's a good boy then?
So I'm a good boy, except I'm not, Kevin's not, but Hudson is. Hudson is a good boy.
He is a,
Yeah,
he's a good
11
boy.
out of 10, excellent dog.
He's ignoring us right now, but he is a good boy.
He's rising above our base humour.
We have a slightly more legit question from Daryl
Yes.
Marr, our editor.
Yeah.
He says, when he first saw TimeWatch's cover, he spent a bit trying to figure out what Shadowrun 2nd edition sourcebook he'd missed in his collection. He asks, was the 90s inspired cover design style intentional because it made him take notice and filled him with nostalgia?
Well, first of all, that's really a question for Hudson, not me.
That's fair.
But I'll do my best. So know that the cover takes place at during the Civil War, the Battle of Appomattox.
You
if
know,
you look into the
I
background,
just noticed that, actually. I've had this book for years. I never looked, because the Tyrannosaur and the people shooting at the Tyrannosaur, they sort of take my attention. I've only just noticed, people having a big mosh in the background.
yes. So that is a T-Rex incursion during the U.S. Civil War. My instructions to Rich Longmore, my artist, was this is a game where the real joy of the game is that you can punch dinosaurs in the face. And I really sort of wanted that feel in the cover. So it wasn't deliberately 90s
Shadowrun.
sort of inspired, at least not by me. It might have been by the artist. But it's a cover that I just absolutely love.
I love the cover too. I mean, it's got a dinosaur. It's got two dinosaurs on the front.
It's got two dinosaurs. Because this is a game where you can play a hyper-intelligent psychic velociraptor. So we wanted to get that across.
Although I found out the other day, I think it was Peter that told me, velociraptors are only the size of chickens, apparently.
Well, so
It's really upset
the normal velociraptors are, but because the meteor never hit the Earth until TimeWatch went back in time and made sure it did, the actual velociraptors that evolved and gained psychic abilities, those are larger.
Excellent.
Oh, yeah.
Good news.
Makes perfect sense.
Yeah. I'm glad we don't have to retroactively change that because
absolutely not.
Chicken-sized velociraptors with feathers doesn't really work.
Exactly. I mean, technically speaking, they're called sophosaurs or philosiraptors. Right?
The knowledge lizards, excellent.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Right, so, TimeWatch. Did you want
Yes.
to talk about Serpentine as well? Or?
Sure, I should. Are we still doing questions, or?
We're done with
we've moved on
questions.
now. We've done. Thank you very much, patrons, for all your questions. We look forward to more.
Let's talk about Swords of the Serpentine. It's what's been consuming me for the last couple of years, so I'll be pretty excited when this comes out. It's currently still sort of on tap for hopefully a Christmas release. There's still a lot of work to do, especially in the art area. I've got probably 98% of the words written. I'm at the spot where I am trying to remove words, which is not a bad spot to be in, really. But between...
edit it, cut it out until it's perfect.
Yes, exactly. Well, that's certainly part of it, right? Because you may notice this, but it turns out that TimeWatch turned out to have a lot of words in it.
It has got a lot of words in it. That's partly why it's so heavy, because words, as we know, have a weight.
Words have a weight. It's absolutely true, right?
It's quite small
I
text
see
as well, isn't
other
it?
people's games. I see these incredibly elegant, lovely games that are. You have a whole game in 1,000 words, or 5,000 words. I'm like, well, that's not my style. The Swords of the Serpentine is a delight. So I am lucky enough to get to write for Pelgrane Press. The first thing I did for them was Owl Hoot Trail, which is a fantasy western. From there, I ended up pitching and then creating TimeWatch. We did a Kickstarter for it. It did just about as well, maybe a little bit less well than the one you just finished up, Russ. So we took in about 6 figures. And the mistake I made there is that we added an awful lot of words to the game during that Kickstarter in the form of stretch goals, which then took much longer to create than I expected
That old trap.
Yeah, exactly. Well, it was a trap, and I fell into it, right? I know better now. But I love how the game came out. Just about every word in that game is one I want to be there. And like the Kickstarter that Peter was describing earlier, It's a game where you can use all of your sort of time travel hijinks in order to do the things that you've seen in any TV show, movie, or book. So you can absolutely, if you've been taken captive by the bad guy and don't have been disarmed, you can say, well, tomorrow I'm going to show up here and duct tape a pistol to the underside of this table. You make your preparedness test, and as long as you're successful and you haven't looked under the table, you've got a pistol there.
Yeah. Was that Bill and Ted, wasn't it, who did that?
That was Bill and Ted.
They didn't do it first, but they did it most famously.
Right. So, for instance, in one particular game that I remember, the heroes, the agents, pushed a bad guy out a window, went back in time, stole a pickup truck, filled the back of the pickup truck with bear traps, and parked the pickup truck underneath the window. Leading to the phrase, when you have a time machine, every problem looks like a pickup truck full of bear traps.
That's not a good way to go.
Well, they deserved it.
He was
so it's a game which really, I think more so than many of sort of Pelgrim's Gumshoe line, sort of embraces that action dynamic. Ken Hite, with the super spy vampire game Night's Black Agents, was the first person who really took this sort of horror-focused investigative game and turned it into a really fun action game. And TimeWatch sort of takes that and runs with it. Swords of the Serpentine does that even more so. What I'm doing here, I was listening to a podcast with Epidiah Ravachol in it. That's a guy who designed Dread and designed a really pretty spectacular narrative-based swords and sorcery game. And I was listening to a podcast with him thinking, man, you could never hack TimeWatch into that. And by the end of the podcast, I'm like, oh, wait, I totally could. And then on my drive home, I drove past the correct road twice because I was thinking too hard about the game. So the big challenge there for me is that I think arguably the weakness with sort of traditional gumshoe games is that the combat system hasn't been really exciting. And if you've got a swords and sorcery game, what you want is you want a really satisfying, epic, cinematic style combat system. So a big chunk of the development time was making sure that that works. And I love the result. We ran 5 different adventures at Gen Con this year. Feedback from those has been really good. The feedback in general from the playtest has been better than I could possibly have dreamed. And so I think it's just about right on track for what we want and where we want it. So now it's just a question of finishing the art, finishing the editing, and getting it out to folks.
Is this going to be a Kickstarter, or is that going?
It is not going to be a Kickstarter. It's going to be traditionally published by Pelgrane with pre-orders. I've been doing monthly blog entries for about the last 8 or 9 months on their C Page XX blog on the Pelgrane Press website, talking about it. So there's sort of 2 parts of this, right? There's the mechanics and the setting. The setting I co-developed with Emily Dresner, who you may also know as Multiplexer. She wrote this really astonishing series of blog posts on critical hits. Yes, Dungeonomics.
Those are so awesome. They are like amazing. It's like just changed a lot of the way I think about games.
Well, so the secret here, Peter, is that when you write something, hire somebody who's smarter than you are and better at it. And that's Emily. She's She's amazing.
I can't really disagree. She's like smarter than me by quite some way.
So our setting in Swords of the Serpentine is in the city of Eversink, which sits at the base of a huge river, sort of in the river delta itself. It's got something of a Venetian feel in the sense that it's on scores of islands connected by canals and bridges. And there's 3 things about the city that make it interesting. Number 1 is the city is always sinking, and no one knows why. It's been around for about 1,000 years, and you lose maybe a couple millimeters or a couple centimeters a year as the buildings are slowly sinking down into the ground. So you lose about a story off a given building per generation. And no one knows why. But what this means is that over the 1,000-year history of the city is that as people have continued to build on top of the roofs as buildings slowly sink, the city's a lot like an iceberg, right? So you've got a certain amount above ground, but if you have the right abilities, you can make your way through the city to the undercity and through all those years of history that are down below ground, some of which are flooded and covered and filled with mud, but not all of them.
Wow.
No.
So that's one thing. The second
thing... Be careful about hitting things with a hammer. in case you suddenly find yourself drowned under a deluge of frozen mud.
Exactly.
Nice. Yeah, solid.
So the second thing is that the patron goddess of the city is the Denari, the goddess of commerce and civilization. And the city is the goddess, and the goddess is the city. When you're in the city, you're literally inside of Denari's body. And so every single coin that gets exchanged is a prayer to her.
Are they the Denarius by any chance?
They're not the Denarius, though I probably should rename it. Because of the sort of abstract wealth system, we have an incredibly complicated and unmemorizable series of coins. Because we don't want people to get hung up on how many actual coins you're carrying. We just care about how much wealth you have. But what that means is that sort of the health of the goddess is dependent on how well the city is doing commerce-wise. The reason that sorcery, because we want in any kind of good swords and sorcery story, sorcery magic tends to be kind of evil, right? It's mysterious. You don't really know where it comes from. So we want that. So the very act of creating powerful sorcerer's spells burns away Denari's blessing. Basically, it carves a hole in her body. And so doing that is illegal. And it's feasible that somebody could kill the goddess by doing that. It's also a world of small gods. So you may, as a sorcerer, you may have a demon inside of you sharing your soul. You may have promised to venerate some tiny ancient god who just has a single altar out in the swamp. And by doing so, you try to make it more powerful without coming underneath Denari's gaze. And the third thing is that the city is filled with statues, hundreds of thousands of statues. And the reason is you can't really bury bodies when you're in a swamp. Or near a swamp, because if there's a flood, and the city floods all the time, the graves sort of wash away. And so as a result, it doesn't matter too much what happens to your corpse. What matters is someone cares enough about you to make a funerary statue for you after you die. This might be a tiny little mud daub statue, or it might be a 20-foot tall bronze behemoth in the middle of a square. But as long as that statue exists, your soul is guaranteed a place in heaven. And if anything happens to it, then either your soul dissipates or it returns back into the world as a ghost. And so the city is filled with these statues. And there's a spirit world sort of parallel to the actual ones where these ghosts sort of cohabit and coexist. There's a theory, whether it's true or not is up to the GM, that actually there's no such thing as ghosts. They're actually Denari's memory of what that person was like during life. And so when you use your abilities to travel into the spirit world, you can literally walk through time and watch the ghosts of buildings rising and falling around you as you walk through the goddess's memory. The cities, there's lots of politics. I'm a big fan of sort of political manipulation in game. So built into the game mechanics, there's 12 or so different major factions that jockey for power inside of the city. You're allied to one or two of those, and you have at least one that opposes you. And you can use that knowledge and those connections to manipulate things within the adventure itself as you try to pull strings and get people to help you, or the people who are angry at you try to track you down.
Is that like the players have one or two factions, has a group that like them, and one enemy, or every individual character? Every individual character. Right,
and so sometimes those factions will match up really nicely. Sometimes they won't. Right. But it means that I can pull in a really easy B plot as compared to my A plot in an adventure as somebody's enemy or something that a player or a character wants from one of those factions comes after them to get it. So Emily did a huge chunk of the setting, and I love it. The game is designed to support primarily kind of classic swords and sorcery tropes. While it's got a big chunk of sort of investigation being a gumshoe game, it's really action focused. And so the investigative abilities that you find in Gumshoe...
So it's a sort of a fantasy game. Sorry, I don't mean to interrupt.
No, please do.
The proper trope would be something like, so you could have a party where nobody can do any magic. And that would be...
Oh, absolutely. Sure.
Yeah. That'd be sort of even encouraged by the setting, I think.
Yeah, that would be fine. You can also... So the characters are based on archetypes. And you can stay within your archetype and get a bonus build point, or you can branch out across multiple archetypes to pick and choose. It's a game where the players have a huge amount of narrative control. So to give you an example, one of the abilities in for one of the classes is laws and traditions. So if you have a rank in laws and traditions, you know the laws and traditions of the setting and of the religion. But you can spend that point in order to make up a law or a tradition that stays true for the rest of the campaign. So you have a huge amount of narrative control, even at a time that it immediately benefits you by spending that point, in order to make up a law that works in your favor.
It's also a kind of a retrospective thing then as well.
Yeah, absolutely. This again, like TimeWatch, I think my favorite ability in Gumshoe is the preparedness ability, which says we're not going to worry about gearing up. If I need a thing, I'll roll a preparedness test, and if I succeed, I have it with me. If you're an expert in preparedness, if you have 8 ranks or more, you get the flashback ability, which lets you say, "Oh, I had this all along," or "This other thing happened."
Yeah.
Remember Lord of the Rings when Frodo gets stabbed in the chest by the cave troll?
Yeah.
When that happened, Frodo wasn't wearing his mithril armor. Sam used his flashback ability from preparedness to declare that Frodo actually was wearing the mithril armor.
Yeah.
He's wearing it all the time. Yeah.
Exactly.
That's how it's always been.
That's the sort of thing you can do.
Okay.
Can you talk a little bit about Gumshoe itself?
Yeah, I probably should have started.
I think there'll be plenty of people here who aren't necessarily familiar with the system.
Yeah,
Okay,
I've never
so
actually played it. I've only read about it, so yeah.
All right, I should have led with that. So here's the idea behind Gumshoe. It is more fun, Gumshoe predicates, to be able to find something out and then figure out how that fits into the plot than it is to roll and fail to find something out. This really came into play with Call of Cthulhu, right? Where somebody rolls your spot hidden and everybody at the table fails, and then the GM has to figure out how to get everybody to roll spot hidden again.
Yeah.
Now that's less of an issue nowadays with the more recent additions, but for a long time so I'd say it was a flaw with BRP.
In role-playing games in general, and that's why Gumshoe's been so revolutionary with the fail-forward idea, which, despite never having played it, as I say, it's like, this is something I've incorporated into my thing. Kind of like, that's an amazing idea. Yeah. So I've been
So I really like that about it. And so what that means is that your abilities are split into 2 different chunks. You've got your general abilities, which are the things that you use for action, right? You're fighting, the things you use to fight or cast spells, athletics to climb buildings or chase things, burglary to pick pockets. And those are things that you can fail at, absolutely. But you also have your investigative abilities. And these are abilities that if you have them and you use them to try to find out a lead or a clue, you're going to be successful. You don't need to roll, you don't need to spend anything. If you have that ability, you're going to find something out if there's something to find. But you can also, if you choose, spend those points to get cool stuff. You don't stop being good at the thing just because you spent the point, but you can only spend that point once in the game. Let me give you an example. Everyone's seen James Bond, right? So James Bond has a bunch of points of charm. Agreed?
Yeah.
If James Bond is at a party and he dances with and flirts with the girlfriend of the archvillain, she's going to give him a clue. He doesn't need to spend anything, right? The player says, "I'm using charm to find out, to learn something," and the GM gives him some clue or hook. But James Bond can spend a point of charm, and the girlfriend will go to bed with him and give him a clue. He can spend 2 points of charm, and she will fall in love with him, betray her boss at some point, and then get killed. Or he can spend 3 points of charm, she falls in love with him, betrays her boss at the best possible time, and lives to the end credit.
Nice.
Right. So there's sort of our scale there. And Gumshoe is usually split between different categories. Usually, sort of the interactive abilities, the social abilities, things like interrogate, and whether or not you can tell if somebody's lying, and whether or not you can taunt someone and basically make them monologue at you. Charm is part of those things, whether you're trustworthy, those sorts of things. And then the other piece of the investigative side is your sort of the things that you know. In TimeWatch, that was split between sort of the book learning you have, the action-based stuff that you know how to do, and your interpersonal abilities. In Swords of the Serpentine, it's split between your social abilities and then your class abilities. So as an example, the Sorcerer class, in Serpentine, all the classes have 4 different abilities. For the Sorcerer, for instance, it's Prophecy, where you have the ability to see into the future, past, or present. It's Corruption, which lets you pull sorcerous magic from the other world to create incredible incredibly powerful and very dangerous spells.
Although, if you try and do that in front of the city authorities, they will come down on you like a ton of bricks.
That is true. So only if you externalize it, right, and it burns away the areas around you, you also can internalize it instead. And the only game mechanic of that is something changes on your body. Maybe maybe you get a hideous mole on the back of your neck. Maybe one of your eyes turns into a slit.
Extra tentacles.
And whether or not you make a particular check, if you're successful in making a check when that happens, depends on whether that change on your body is noticeable or not. When you look at something like Fafhrd and the Grey Mouser, and Ningobble of the Seven Eyes has 7 eyes and wears a hood all the time, right? He was pretty careless about his sorcery corruption.
He was. Right. And has big trouble finding sunglasses as a result.
Well, you're not wrong, right? And the other two, I think, are Leechcraft, which is basically you know how poisons and disease work, and you can either poison people or give them diseases if you choose. And Forgotten Lore, which is the ability to know things that other people won't know. And you can spend points of Forgotten Lore to establish a fact is true. Don't be stupid, Russ. Everyone knows that on midnight, when there's a full moon and it's high tide, horses can talk. Everyone knows that. And so for the rest of the campaign, horses can talk at midnight at high tide when there's a full moon.
They're not fascinating conversationalists.
I don't know why I loved it so much, but, it's kind of like the preparedness thing and the TimeWatch, Bill and Ted thing and this. I just love this idea of sort of retrospective narrative control in games. I think it's such fun.
It plays into the type of game I really love. So, for instance, the Thief class has abilities like scurrilous rumors. So you can pick up rumors that are going around the city, but you can spend those points to spread rumors about other people. Ridiculous luck. Skullduggery, to find out information by illegal means. Stuff like that.
So what's the sort of
this plays into the kind of game I like, so that's what I went with.
So what's the sort of range of characters you play in Serpentine?
So you've got a huge range, and it's affected by a couple of different things. You may want sort of traditional swords and sorcery characters, where, whether you're taking that model from Fafhrd and the Grey Mouser, or Conan, or the Black Company, right, with more of a mercenary approach, because mercenaries are one of the political factions in the city. You could pretty easily do, and I've done it in one of the Gen Con games, like Ankh-Morpork's City Watch, without any problem whatsoever.
Copy code on the rest.
In my own personal playtest game that I'm running here, the characters are what are called freelance slinks. Basically, they're private investigators who are taking jobs for people that can't be solved any other way. And so there's sort of a range of down-and-out, untrustworthy sorcerers and a former church inquisitor, somebody's enforcer, big and burly and pretty dangerous, that sort of thing. But there's a big range. My secret, every time I make a game, I have a secret design goal. TimeWatch's secret design goal was so that someone could run Buckaroo Banzai for me. The secret design goal here is that you could actually steal the sorcery system, which may be worth talking about, and run Avatar: The Last Airbender games.
Okay.
Oh, now I'm sitting forward. You got our attention, please.
So there's two things about the rules that I think are pretty cool. One thing is that in addition to your health, you also have morale as one of your defenses. And so you can, by attacking somebody's morale, you can defeat a bad guy without ever laying a finger on them. We've had games where the bad guy has been sitting on the floor, crouched, lamenting their life choices, completely unhurt.
Nice.
Yeah.
Go for the psychological victory.
Exactly. But if you think about it, right, when you look at The Hobbit, when Smaug... when Bilbo is invisible and Smaug is trying to use his draconic wiles to talk Bilbo out into the open, he's making a sway attack against Bilbo's morale.
Yes.
Right? So I wanted a way in order to model that, and I really like the results there.
That sounds good.
Yeah, so that's part of it. The other thing that I really find a lot of fun is the sorcery system, because basic sorcery does the same amount of damage anything else does, right? Stabbing someone with a sword or trying to make a sway attack against their morale. Yeah. But you've got spheres that are that sort of have a theme attached to them, and you describe all your sorcery within that theme. So, for instance, if my theme was rats. And you have one sphere or one theme for every point of corruption you have. was rats and flesh manipulation, I would probably be attacking somebody's health when I attacked them. And when I use my sorcery against them, I could describe that as rats swarm out from the corners to attack them. Or I try to turn their body inside out.
Or you create a giant rat golem to go forth and attack them.
Exactly, right? And it doesn't sort of matter what it is that I describe. I've got a mechanical effect that's dictated by the game rules, and then everything else is based on my imagination.
Yeah.
And so the result of that is that everybody's spells are not always the same. They may do similar damage, but you describe it the way you imagine it happening.
No, I do enjoy that. I mean, I've used something very similar in that Simply 6 thing, actually. It's,
good.
You basically choose a theme to your spells, then anything you do is just, you describe it within that.
Perfect. Yeah, exactly the same thing.
Yeah. No, it's a wonderful. It's such a flexible and wonderful way of doing it as well.
Well, I like it because it shoves that control into the player's hand,
exactly.
not the GM's hand.
Yeah, it's sort of going back to all this sort of player narrative stuff, I suppose, isn't it? It's shunting a lot of the narrative control from the rule system onto the player themselves.
Exactly. One of the things I usually say when someone says, "So what's the building look like?" I'm like, "I don't know. You tell me."
Yeah.
Like, I don't care. Right? So they can describe it however they want it.
I never used to do anything like that, and it's only in the last couple of years I've started doing that in games. And I'm not sure where I picked that up from. Maybe
it didn't come from D&D, but I think like Robin Law's The Feng Shui.
Yeah, maybe
the Hong Kong martial art games that does a great job with it.
I may have seen some live streamers doing it, maybe, or something like that.
Okay.
And I just suddenly occurred to me, why have I not always been doing that? It's so obvious.
Well, it creates player buy-in, is what it does, because people feel invested in the world.
Exactly. Yeah. And players love just inventing stuff.
Not all of them, but it definitely can be quite fun.
Yeah,
right.
I mean, some players just get quite offended. Like, why are you asking me to do stuff? I'm not here for that. You're the GM. You tell me.
I've never come across.
And I think that's valid, right? If someone feels that way, I'll just pick up that responsibility instead.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. So, what is it about Gumshoe in particular that you kind of think makes it suitable, especially for say TimeWatch and Serpentine? What's as opposed to say using a D20 system or using basic role playing or anything else?
So it's a game system that presumes competence. John Rogers from Leverage used the phrase competence porn, where it's people who are really good at their job doing their job really well. And that's what you get in most traditional sword and sorcery stories. It's not the sort of fledgling adventurers who are then gaining power. It's people who are already pretty decent.
Yeah.
And I've got rules for playing sort of the fledgling characters as well as the older and more powerful characters as well, and flipping back and forth between those in different adventures, which is kind of cool. But that is the thing that I like about Gumshoe. It presumes competence. And by spending those investigative points, and in this game, in Serpentine, you can use it to do more damage and to create any number of pretty cool effects. You get to basically, kick some ass in a way that's defined by you against some reasonably tough foes. I like that a lot. There's a mechanic, one of the big complaints, I think, or one of the challenges is that because it was originally designed as a horror game, Gumshoe, your competence ablates, right? It gets worse as you spend points if you don't have a chance to refresh those points. Both TimeWatch and Swords of the Serpentine have a mechanic in place for refreshing the general ability points. And in Swords of the Serpentine, it's when you defeat foes, you get some points back. I want the feel of Conan cutting his way across a battlefield, and with every mook that he drops, he gains the ability to chop down through more mooks.
Yeah.
Well, that's like proper thing, tree style thing. Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about the sort of adventures you'd be having? I mean, talk about TimeWatch and Swords of the Serpentine, actually, because I think some of the ideas of adventures that you might have in TimeWatch are such fun. That, I'd like to sort of delve into that for a little bit if we could.
Yeah, let's do that. So they're different, right? TimeWatch adventures are much more of a mystery, or tend to be more of a mystery. So here's an example. One of the TimeWatch adventures, you start off, and it turns out that during the Bay of Pigs, when the U.S. and the USSR fought over Cuba, in the real world, what happened was that President Kennedy was able to defuse that. He called the Soviet Union's bluff. They backed down. Well, one of the adventures that I wrote starts with with that not working at all,
Right.
and a massive nuclear exchange happening and millions of people dying. So you, as time agents, are sent back to figure out what happened. And what you find out is that the reason that went badly is that President Nixon screwed it up. And you think, Nixon wasn't president. Mm-hmm. And so you go try to figure out, with your time machine, what happened to Kennedy. Turns out that Kennedy is a barber in South Boston. So you go get your hair cut by John Kennedy, and he tells you that, he had political aspirations, but his family was poor and never had a chance to send him to college. So you think, what happened? And what you find out is that Kennedy's dad, Joe Kennedy, at least according to legend, made his initial stake of money that he invested in Hollywood by bootlegging during the U.S. Prohibition. And the bad guys, in order to make the bad guys in that adventure are mutant radioactive cockroaches from the future who are trying to bring out nuclear war, like one does.
Yep.
And the bad guys in that adventure have gone back to the late 1800s to a very important temperance worker to influence her into being pro-alcohol instead of anti-alcohol. And so prohibition never happens.
Right.
And so Kennedy doesn't become president, and so we get a nuclear exchange during the Bay of Pigs. So you basically unravel that, then go back to the late 1800s to Carrie Nation, who is a 6-foot-tall temperance worker known for going into saloons and smashing them up with axes. Mm-hmm. And you basically interfere with her wedding to make sure that the shape-shifted giant radioactive mutant cockroach from the future doesn't mess things up. So she literally had a vision from God in 1899 telling her that she should be anti-alcohol, and the bad guys try to make sure that vision from God is pro-alcohol instead, and you've got to fix it. Right. So this is the sort of thing you do. You take historical nonsense, you change something, you figure out what happened, and you let your players figure that out. Whole lot of fun. In Serpentine, it's going to be different because we're looking for a more traditional fantasy adventure. But it turns out that even in all of your classic fantasy stories, there's still a ton of investigation. So in comparison, right? So of the 5 adventures of Swords of the Serpentine that ran at Gen Con, one of them, the adventure that's in the core book, the heroes discover that somebody is stealing corpses and bringing them into the bad part of the city, and no one is quite sure why. And they end up having to deal with somebody who, I don't want to give too much away, right? But is possessed by, whether it's a small god or something else, something very, very bad. And he's creating something really horrible out of those corpses. And the reason has a lot to do with how his family was treated in the past. So you need to unravel the politics while you're figuring out what's going on, and then either stop him or stop what he's doing in order to prevent a disaster. One of the adventures, all of the heroes are basically homeless children who are living in the city. That adventure is called Ragamuffins. And your sort of crappy half-sunken home is robbed while you're out trying to steal food. And not only do whoever robbed it take all of your stuff, they take a very special sentimental lantern that you have hanging there. And that lantern turns out to be a sorceress item that has a huge amount of power. And you have to figure out who stole your stuff, why they stole it, and steal it back from them. Which may or may not necessitate a trip down into the Undercity to deal with creatures that are not necessarily human. One of the adventures, everybody plays members of the City Watch. When a noble is killed and their body dumped in the bad section of town, you have 24 hours to figure out who killed them and why. Or else there's someone's threatening civil war.
Wow. Yeah.
There's an adventure that I ran which didn't run at Gen Con called The Winding Tower, where you're members of a mercantile house who's gone out, who's left the city. Why the God's name would you want to leave the city? But you've left the city and have gone out into the jungle to find ancient pre-human ruins and the things that are hidden there, so that hopefully you can bring back what's there and make a huge amount of money off of it. But of course, nothing's ever that simple.
Of course not.
I will point out that one thing I like about this, because I tend to want to get people to the plot, when you're traveling, you have the option of doing a travel montage. Okay. And by travel montage, what I do is I say, okay, Peter, tell me something that happened, right? Something bad, some kind of challenge or danger that happened during your travel. And then I say, hey, Russ, make it worse.
Yeah, okay.
Oh, yeah. Okay, so we were trying to cross a canal, but we found that the bridge was like somebody had stolen all the wood from the footpath across the middle of the bridge.
Right.
So it's like,
yeah, Russ, make it worse.
And then I add the sharks.
And the canal is full of sharks. It's like, what is wrong with these people?
And then you can either play that out, or a third person, if you're trying to get a feel for what the journey was like without spending a lot of time on it, a third person at the table can then tell you how you managed to get around that, or how you managed to solve that. Right?
Thank goodness there was that pogo stick vendor nearby. I mean,
okay.
Actually, now I'm thinking about it, maybe the pogo stick vendor was responsible for stealing the wood. Sorry.
Yeah, pogo sticks? Well, anyways.
I don't know. Barge poles, there you go.
You get the idea.
Pole to wear
so, in my game recently, the heroes were asked to investigate a warehouse fire, and it turns out that the warehouse was full of an addictive drug. They turned out that they were hired by the crime family that is vending that addictive drug to find out why it got who did it and track down the person. It turns out that the drug itself. So one of the things, and if you're listening, if you're in my game, you probably shouldn't hear this. One of the things in the city, down deep, somewhere deep in the Undercity, there's a fungus there. A sentient fungus.
Nice.
A huge sentient fungus that basically sends out spores into the canals and tries to infest and infect people with those spores, turning them into its slaves. And they probably aren't going to get activated, but slowly spores start growing inside of their body, and it can activate them at any time. Anyways, the fungus has managed to co-opt this crime family, and all of the addictive drug is full of spores. And so when the heroes find the person who did this, who's like a young noble kid who happens to have prophecy, and he hasn't been identified by the church, so the church hasn't brought him in as an official church seer, so he's kind of left out there on his own, is pretty scared. But he got a vision about how horrible this drug was and what it was doing to people, so he tried to destroy it. And sadly, the heroes in my game, not knowing this, turned him into the crime family. Well, they are getting paid. Yeah, it's not a nice place. But you get the feel, right? Yeah. So there's a lot of different types of adventures you can have.
Really, really fun.
That's I could laugh. Yeah.
So that's coming out later this year, you said?
So the goal is, I think the goal is Christmas time, but I am not in charge, so do not quote me on that. I'm not in charge of the production schedule, and there's still lots to do, but word-wise, we're in pretty good shape. So, okay, so we should wrap up. Is there anything else that you guys want to know about me or TimeWatch or Serpentine?
I wanted to talk a bit more about TimeWatch, very, very briefly. About sort of future support for TimeWatch. Is there any more planned? Are you planning on writing any more?
Oh, sure. I absolutely want to. It's just a matter of time. My focus this year has been getting Swords of the Serpentine out the door. I have a whole sort of adventure path dealing with dinosaurs mapped out for TimeWatch. And, in part of it, right, it's a question of how much demand there is for it. My guess is that after Serpentine comes out, if people like that, because that's going to have a higher profile than TimeWatch did, my guess is that Serpentine is going to drive more TimeWatch sales as well, which will create more of a demand for an additional adventure path. And that would be pretty fantastic.
It would be.
Absolutely.
Yeah. But right now, right, it's my focus is on getting Swords of the Serpentine out so that while it's going, I can do other stuff.
Yeah. Thanks so much for coming on, Kev. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Yeah.
This has been a delight. Thank you both so much.
Thank you, everybody, for listening. It's been a pleasure, as always, to have Kevin on the podcast. That's it from me, Russ.
And that's goodbye from me, Peter Coffey, from the Southampton Guild of Roleplayers.
And that's goodbye from Kevin as well.
Thank you very much.
Bye.
Apparently I now have to read this to you. This is the official podcast of Morris's unofficial tabletop RPG news, which you can find at enworld.org. You can find show notes at morris.podbean.com or wherever you found the podcast. If you feel like they deserve it, you can support the show on Patreon. In return, you will receive exclusive bonus content. Just go to patreon.com/Morris. If you're interested in his babbling nonsense, you can follow at Morris on the Twitter. Send your emails to morrispodcast@gmail.com. Not all of your emails, just the ones you want us to see. That's it. I'm bored now. You can go away. Shoo, off you go. Goodbye. Get out of here.